I, 31 female, recently lost my fiancé, 37 male, Jake. We've been together for 6 years. His death was unexpected, and I'm still mourning. At the funeral, which I arranged and paid for, his brother, 32 male, Jim, asked me when I'm going to return the engagement ring to the family. For context, the engagement ring with which Jake proposed is an ancient family heirloom. It's a gorgeous ring, but what makes it priceless is the story behind it. Jake got the ring from his grandma a month after we started dating. He claimed he knew back then he would marry me someday, and wanted to get his grandma's blessing on the ring. When he proposed, his grandma already passed away, so having the blessing put on the ring made it extra special for the both of us. I asked Jim if he's serious, to which he said yes. Apparently his long-term girlfriend Stacy saw the ring a while ago and fell in love with it, and the story behind it, so she kept nagging him to get her something similar, which he couldn't. He figured, since I can no longer marry Jake, he can propose to Stacy with it. I told him that he is rude, that the ring was blessed especially for Jake and I and mine, and even if that wasn't the case, bringing it up during Jake's funeral is incredibly disrespectful. After the funeral, I got a message from Stacy saying it would mean the world for her to be the new owner of the ring, and I could always think of her and Jim's wedding as the bittersweet ending to my relationship. She said the ring was blessed so one of the grandsons can marry the love of his life, and since Jim is the only living grandson left, he has a claim on it. I blocked her. My ex-mother-in-law also reached out to me and said that although she understands my pain, I can't keep the ring since it's a family heirloom, so I should suck it up and give it to Jim. I snapped and told her no, the ring is staying with me and following me to the grave if need be. It's a beautiful symbol of Jake's love, and I won't let Jim and Stacy sully that memory of him. The ring is legally mine, so all they can do is cry about it and be better. They keep harassing me on social media, saying I'm a bad person and that I stole the family heirloom to spite Jim and Stacy out of jealousy, but I ignore them. Today I met up with my brother, and he said that although Jim's approach was highly inappropriate, I'm being selfish for keeping the ring as a keepsake. I could always wear different jewelry that Jake bought me in his memory, but they could never replace an heirloom that's been in their family for generations. I'm now back home, and I can't stop thinking about it. Up until this point, I was sure I did everything right, but maybe I'm just being blinded by my grief. A friend suggested I ask for an objective opinion and recommended this place. So, am I the a-hole? Since you paid for the funeral, and they didn't, offer to sell them the ring back for the cost of the funeral. If you're not family entitled to keep the heirloom in their opinion, you shouldn't have had to pay for the funeral expenses. The brother was an a-hole to ask for it at the funeral. Otherwise, keep it, not the a-hole. You were family enough to pay for the funeral. You were family enough to have grandmother's blessing. You were family enough to your partner. The ring is yours, OP. The memory is yours. Gift it to someone whose love you want to bless, if you so choose. Otherwise, do what makes you happy. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. They don't want it back because it's a family heirloom. They want it back because Stacy is shallow and Jim can't spend the money. If he could buy you the same ring, they wouldn't care, but are using the family bees to manipulate you. Tacky and disgusting. I can't possibly imagine asking someone who lost their husband for the engagement ring back. My boyfriend, 27, and I, 26, have been together for 2 years. He's a good heart and is normally rational, but his one issue is that he expects to accompany me in every occasion, no matter how big or small. He even went with me to my ex-boyfriend's funeral after days of begging. Now, my best friend got married a few days ago. It was very small, and only close family and friends were invited. My boyfriend couldn't come because of the +1 rule. He pitched a hissy fit, saying my best friend has no respect for my relationship, and was shocked when he learned that I was still going to its end. He told me that if he can't go, then I'm expected to not go as well. But that is my best friend, and I had to respect her rules. He gave me an ultimatum. Either we go together, or I stay home with him. I ended up going, cause, again, I respected my friend's rules. He was angry with me, and kept calling the entire 2-hour drive, then stopped. Later, I got a text from his friend, telling me he, my boyfriend, got into an accident, and was taken to the hospital. I freaked out. He gave me the address, and I had to leave the wedding and told my friends why. I was crying the entire drive home, and kept calling his friend, but got no response. I arrived to the hospital and asked about my boyfriend, and they checked and told me he wasn't there. My anxiety reached 160% as I kept calling his friends one by one. I just went home, and there he was, along with his friend. He saw me and said that he was sorry, but this was the only way he can get me home after I left him alone. After the initial shock, I just blew up yelling at him about lying and making me leave my friend's wedding and having me literally go to the hospital and freaking out because of him. I kicked his friend out and we got into an argument. He kept talking about how much I love him, thus I left, which is my own doing, not his, and he was just trying to see if I really chose my friend's wedding over him. He then argued that my friend caused this and I shouldn't agree with her to exclude him. I said what he did was horrible and called him horrible, and then went to my room. It was awful cause my friends kept calling to check on him cause they thought he was really at the hospital. He said I overreacted and that I yelled at the wrong person. Am I the a-hole? Did I go too far? Your boyfriend is not a good person. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be to move forward. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Duck him and leave his butt. There were so many red flags, and this emotional manipulation and lying to control you is beyond. Get out now. My wife and I had our first son around 2 months ago. She was home isolated during her entire pregnancy after the 6-month mark because of some pregnancy complications. We also agreed that the first 2 months after birth, our parents and siblings would be the only ones allowed to visit and see the baby, and our friends and the rest of the relatives could wait. As soon as the baby turned 2 months, my wife started trying to get back into her social life again. Sometimes she'd bring the baby with her, but sometimes she'd expect me to babysit. Whenever I couldn't babysit, she'd call her mom to ask her if she could care for the baby for a few hours. My wife's a great mom, and she truly cares for our baby, but it's frustrating how she feels the need to go out the entire time. One day while she was out shopping with a friend of hers, I was babysitting the kid and my mom visited me and asked where my wife was. I told her that she's out with a friend. My mom got very mad about how my wife went out, and she told me I have no backbone for not calling her out and telling her to stay home with the baby. I told my mom I'll handle this. My mom waited until my wife got back home, and she started scolding her. It wasn't a proud moment for me, and I really didn't want my mom to get involved, but my wife needed to hear it from someone else too. My mom told my wife that she's irresponsible and that she should cut down her meetings with friends and stay home to care for the kid, as a proper mother would. My wife tried to defend herself, saying how I was always out with my friends both during her pregnancy and after she gave birth, but both I and my mom tried to explain how me going out is not the same as her going out. My mom told her that the little walks and coffee hangouts with her friends are over, and that she better get used to the fact that her social life will now be limited. It sucks, but that's how it is. I agreed with my mother on all that, and my wife is not speaking to me for days. She even sleeps in the guest room now, and took the baby's crib there as well. She will only cook for herself and the baby, and not for me. My mother-in-law and my sister-in-law have texted me saying I was a huge a-hole for this, and so was my mom. So I should not be surprised my wife is acting like that towards me. Yes, the a-hole. Notice how you say taking care of your own kid is babysitting? You don't even mention the amount of time she goes out versus you, but you just want us to trust you that it's different for you? You don't even mention speaking to your wife before your mom said anything. Too bad your wife has 2 kids at home. Wow, really? Yes, the a-hole, for sure. 1. You are the father of a child. Stop referring to parenting as babysitting. What the actual duck? 2. How dare you let your mother scold your wife like she is a child? It was none of her business, and you should have stepped in immediately. This was something for you and your wife to discuss privately. 3. Both I and my mom tried to explain how me going out is not the same as her going out. How so? Again, what the duck? Because she's a mother, she isn't allowed to have any time for herself, but you are? Get over yourself. OP, you are the worst. I, 44 male, have been with my wife 12 years, married for 6. We have 3 beautiful kids. We support our kids. We live in our dream home. We vacation often. Life is good for us. I have no complaints. The problem is, when I was in college, I was 19. A classmate of mine and her wife approached me about being a donor for her and her wife. They were both in their late 20s and wanted to have children. So I agree. I told my parents about it. Lawyers were involved that I was not to seek them or try to contact them or the kids. Everyone was on the same page, eventually found out they were both able to get pregnant. A few months later, I signed some more papers at the lawyer's office. Never heard anything else. They moved on. I moved on. When visiting my parents, my wife and I ran into this family. Their son looks exactly like me, to the point where it was uncomfortable. Their daughter looks like my sister. They introduced us. It was awkward but pleasant. My wife was completely blindsided, but I understand. I never brought it up with my wife because when we first started dating, kids and fertility was a huge trigger for her because she had been told she would never have kids. But then we started popping out babies, so I never felt the need to bring this up because I could legally never be involved with these kids, like ever. She's threatening divorce. She's really struggling with the facts that our kids have siblings. I try to tell her that they don't, that they aren't my kids, and these women, their mothers, mean literally nothing to me. I go years with even giving them a thought. In hindsight, I could have, but I really was trying not to trigger a very sensitive issue for her, and we eventually have beautiful children of our own. So, I feel like the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I get both sides. To you, those children are not your children. You donated sperm, and that was the end of your involvement. However, I can also see your wife's side, because she didn't know. If I knew my husband had donated sperm, it wouldn't bother me. If he knew that had resulted in a child and hadn't mentioned that to me, I'd have felt hurt and lied to. And that is probably what's upsetting your wife. She feels you deceived her, and if you kept this from her, what else have you kept from her? My mind would be going to the what-ifs in terms of if our child got in a relationship with their biological sibling. Not the a-hole. This is a tough one. Legally, you don't have kids, just like most donors don't. But I'm not surprised your wife is shot and hurt that she found out by being blindsided. It also makes sense that you wouldn't have wanted to bring it up since fertility talks triggered her. You were well-intentioned, but she's entitled to her feelings on this. Hopefully, some therapy will help. Soft yes, the a-hole. Never mentioning it. Did you date for a second and then start trying to have kids? That's a little weird. I mean, your wife is overreacting, but also, it is a little weird. I am poly, and in a committed, long-term throuple with my partner, let's call him Aaron, and my fiancé, let's call him Jack. We've been together for almost 3 years and collectively raise our 12-year-old daughter. My partner is also poly, and my fiancé chooses not to date others. We communicate very well and make decisions as a family. Aaron moved in with Jack and I about 18 months ago. Jack and I had been together for almost 2 years at that time. Just a bit of background. Jack and I getting married within the month. Our families are generally supportive, if only curious about our family life. Even if they don't quite understand, they accept us for who we are and simply enjoy that we are happy, healthy. Jack's mother, with whom I have always had a nice relationship with, is even paying for the alteration of my wedding dress. However, my mother-in-law has a best friend of 50 years that found out about our family through Facebook. I had never met or spoken to this person before. She requested me as a friend. I accepted after my mother-in-law told me who she was, and posted an inflammatory paragraph on my Facebook wall. She asked what the hell was wrong with me, and what do I think I'm doing? This happened to come at a particularly stressful time, as I was currently in the ER waiting room due to a family member's mental health crisis. I was already speaking to Jack about this situation, despite the fact that he was at work. I rarely interrupt him unless it's an emergency. I mentioned his mom's friend's actions as well, and we both agreed it was grossly inappropriate and entitled of her. I took the post down. We both sent this woman, let's call her Deborah, private messages asking her to direct any questions or concerns to us in a less public setting. I was polite for my mother-in-law's sake, because I respect her. Hours later, Jack and I got our own messages from Deborah. She explains that she has been a marriage and family therapist for 35 years, and I am a sick, twisted, narcissistic predator. She lauded herself as brave, kind, and righteous, for letting us know her opinion. She told Jack that he was naive and obviously being manipulated. Deborah has no idea of the inner workings of our family. She was nevertheless convinced I sleep with people indiscriminately without protection or the consent of my partners. I was broken, she said, and now I break others. I deserve no one and nothing, and Jack deserves better. She focused on the fact that I had taken down the post as a deliberate focus on ignoring discussion and knowledge, and claimed I was triangulating the situation by selfishly tattling on me and interrupting Jack at work. Remember, we were already dealing with an emergency. Finally, she uninvited herself to our wedding, which we had included her in as a courtesy only. Neither of us answered her out of respect to my mother-in-law, but it blows my mind how on earth she convinced herself this was appropriate. She hasn't seen Jack in over a decade and never talks to him. To me, she was a stranger. She asked no questions of either of us to gain clarification. This woman is a therapist? She included multi-ethnic relationships in her list of unconventional clients she had worked with. She talked mostly about how talented she was, and patted herself on the back for martyring herself by thrusting her unwanted opinion into the lives of others. My mother-in-law, fortunately, disagrees with her friend. She has understandable protective feelings towards her son, but sees we are happy. It wouldn't be a wedding without drama, right? You should report her to whomever governs your practice. She is a horrible therapist, and a piss-poor, pathetic excuse for a human being. It's an unfortunate fact of the therapy profession that a lot of narcissists are attracted to it, and that they cause horrific harm to those who are trying to get real therapy from someone, and end up with the narcissist instead. I'm glad this person was a virtual stranger, and that you were not actually her patient. She shouldn't have any patience.